Hey guys, here I have the Rayovac Sportsman 180 6-watt portable fluorescent lantern from the mid to late 1970s. This thing's been working really great. It's been running this extremely worn out bulb just fine, but just recently the bulb has decided it's not going to start anymore. And I've tried running it upside down, which doesn't work. I used to put it on the heater to get it hot and then run it, and that would work. But now that doesn't even work anymore. It's just completely dead to the world. But I am going to do something fun with this bulb to A, see if I can get it working again, and B, if it doesn't get working, what I am going to do will surely put it closer to death. Now, this bulb probably should have been thrown away years ago. This bulb originally ran in one of my lesser fluorescent lanterns, which of course has underdriven it, thus causing the ends to go black and causing it not to start anymore. Both the filaments have broken. Probably all the emitter has adhered itself to the ends of the bulb, which is why it won't start anymore. It has been working, so I'm not one to throw away a working fluorescent bulb just because the filaments are broken or the ends have gone black, but it seems now that it simply just doesn't want to work anymore. Here I have my General Electric 6-watt pull string closet light that runs on 4D batteries. As you can see, I've taken the lamp out of it, and you see two wires coming out of it. Quite a while ago, I stuck some wires into the battery contacts inside so I could run it straight from my power supply down there, straight off the 6-volt line. And that works pretty good. And I've been running some tests on this lamp, and by God, for being one of my so-called lesser fluorescent lanterns, this has the toughest and most versatile ballast I've ever seen in a battery-powered fluorescent lamp. I've done a ton of tests on this that include running bulbs of the wrong size, both smaller and larger bulbs. I've run this thing on 12 volts when it's designed to be run on 6, and it doesn't care whatsoever. The ballast doesn't even get too terribly warm. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to stick that dead bulb in this. We're going to hook this up to 12 volts. I'm going to have my multimeter hooked up in series so we can monitor the current, and we're going to see what this bulb acts like in this lantern being severely overpowered. So here's how it works. I just have the wires basically stuffed into the battery terminals. Here's the ballast of the unit. It's unlike any ballast I've ever seen in a modern, cheap, fluorescent battery-powered lamp. If we compare it to this ballast, this is the ballast out of my General Electric 8-watt closet light. It recently blew up for no reason whatsoever. I was just using it as normal, and then all of a sudden it decided to draw around 10 times its rated current, and something went pop. And if we look at the bottom, the transformer's a little bit burnt. But if we compare it to this unit, they don't look too terribly different. This one's got a transformer, one transistor, and 2 resistors and 3 capacitors. And if we look at this one, it also has a transformer. It has 2 transistors instead of 1. It has what appears to be 3 capacitors, maybe even 4. That might be a capacitor too, I'm not sure. It's labeled L2. And 1 resistor. And take a look at this capacitor. Holy cow, this thing's huge. I mean, compare with the capacitor on this, and then this thing's got this great big honkin' thing on it. What's the capacitance? It's rated for 16 volts, so it's on the low voltage side, not the high voltage. 16 volts, 2200 microfarads. And this capacitor on this other ballast, it's also 16 volts, and it's 100 microfarads. So this has 22 times more capacitance than this, assuming that the capacitor on this ballast serves the same purpose as the capacitor on this ballast. So this is quite literally the highest quality ballast that I've ever found in a modern battery-powered fluorescent lamp. In the experiments I've done with this fixture, I've also found that the ballast exhibits a very cool phenomenon that I haven't seen in my other battery-powered fluorescent lamps. And that is, if you hook up a bulb of a different size than what it was designed to do, the ballast will actually adjust its power output for that bulb. So for example, you know, it's meant for a 6-watt bulb. If I hook this up with a 4-watt bulb, it'll actually put out less current than when it's running a 6-watt bulb. If I hook up an 8-watt bulb to it, it'll actually output more current. And when you hook up a dead bulb to it, like this one, it'll just put out whatever current the bulb asks for. So, first I'll just show you this running normally. It's got a normal healthy, or not healthy, but a normal working bulb in it. And it's hooked up to the 6-volt line. And I have an ammeter, my multimeter, hooked up in series so we can monitor the current. So I'll plug the power supply in. And there the bulb starts. And current is dropping. As the bulb warms up, it'll draw less current. That's where the versatile factor of the ballast comes into play. Whenever the electrical characteristics of whatever the ballast is powering changes, the ballast will also appropriately change its power output. So as you can see, we started out drawing about 0.6 amps, and then as the bulb got warmer and its resistance decreased, the ballast reacted to that decrease in resistance by appropriately lowering its power output. So now we're drawing only 0.44 amps. And where's my calculator? If we just calculate our power here, the voltage of the power supply is about 5.5 volts, and we multiply that by 0.44 amps, we get about 2.5 watts. So, you know, like any modern battery-powered fluorescent lamp, it's pretty underpowered, but it does provide the adequate voltage to start the bulb. So, we're sitting here running pretty happily, so let me unplug it and we'll put the dead bulb in. And we plug in the power supply, and of course it does not start, and because it doesn't start, it doesn't draw much current. We're drawing about 1/4 of an amp. Now what I'll do is, I will hook this up to the 12-volt side, and we'll see some fun starting. I just want to take this time to caution not to try this at home. The electronics in fluorescent lamps put out extremely high voltage, and that can seriously harm you. So again, do not play around with this stuff like I do. I know what I'm doing, I know what to touch and what not to touch. So just enjoy what I do in these videos, and be safe and don't try it yourself. Alright, now I have the lamp plugged into the 12-volt end of the power supply. When I plug it in, you're going to see the bulb do a bunch of crazy stuff, and you're going to see a current draw of about 1.5 amps. So I'll put this closer, and we'll plug it in. And you might see some orange flame-like patterns happening here. There's our current draw. And now we'll unplug it. That's amazing. Any other battery-powered fluorescent lamp I've ever seen would have died. They would have died as soon as I plugged it in. But the ballast in this thing, you know, just shoving 1.5 amps through this dead bulb, it just doesn't mind at all, and it doesn't even get that warm. It's quite amazing, and it's running at twice its voltage, twice the input voltage it was designed for. So I've never actually kept this thing running like you just saw, pushing 1.5 amps of power. because I'm scared I don't want to actually kill the ballast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook up a resistor, or at least a resistor type device, in series so that the current going to the fixture is limited, and that way we'll have less risk of blowing the ballast. To use as my inline resistor, I have this 12 volt boat light. I've always loved these boat lights. They are red and on one side and green on the other, and this one actually has a clear part on the back, so the light coming out of the back's kind of like a smoky gray color. I've always wanted one of these, and I found this in a thrift store. They wanted $5 for it, which I think was quite a bit, but I got it anyway. And this thing's huge. Like, I've always been tempted to get one on eBay, but they're really small. This is a full-size one. This is what you'd find on a big ship. I'll open it up so you can see the bulb inside. There. So there's what it looks like, and it takes this 12 volt bayonet cap lamp. So here's what it looks like. It's rated for 12 volts. It's 25 watts. So when you run this thing at the full 12 volts, it's extremely bright. So I usually don't do it because it's just too bright to bear. And it's got these very convenient screw posts to screw wires into it, so that's what I've done, and the wires come at the bottom here. So I have it plugged into the 6 volt part, so I'll just show you it running. There we go. And I'll put the cap on it. And there. And there's the back side. It's really cool. I love it. So we're going to use this as our inline resistor just to slightly reduce the current that's allowed to go to the fluorescent lamp. Okay, so how this works is I have the ground connection going into my multimeter. The other end of the multimeter goes into my resistor. The other end of my resistor goes into the ground connection of the lamp. And then the other end of the lamp goes into the 12 volts. This thing will reduce the current allowed to go into the fluorescent lamp from the 1.5 amps that it draws to around 1.1 amps. So we'll have a little bit of safety, so we'll plug it in. There's our current draw. And let me see if I can lower the exposure a bit. There we go. It's just flickering, it's not actually started, so it's really, really dead. You can see a bit of orange happening. There's our current draw. When I bypass the resistor, that's our current draw. And it stopped flickering. It still hasn't really started though. That end's cool. Ow, that end's hot as hell. And we're settled at about 1.1 amps. And the ballast in this thing does not care at all. Let's flip the bulb over, see if we get a different response. Getting some good flickerage. It's flickering a lot more to the naked eye than it is on camera. And you can hear the ballast making some whining noises. And just for a demonstration, I'll put a healthy bulb back in it, so you can see how much current a healthy bulb draws when you run it on this thing on 12 volts. There it is, starts instantly, and we're only drawing half an amp. Yet this dead bulb, which doesn't start, is drawing 1.5 amps. And you can also see our ballast isn't glowing anymore. See, this bulb draws so much current that it causes that to glow. And this is the thing. This is something I never really knew. Actually, someone on Lighting Gallery told me it before, but now I've experienced it for myself. When a fluorescent bulb wears out and starts to die, its electrical characteristics actually change, and it begins to act like a bulb of a much higher wattage. This is why really you shouldn't run dead bulbs in fluorescent lamps, because some fluorescent lamps, the ballasts are okay with running dead lamps because the ballast will not change their power output in response to the change of the lamp characteristics. So if I have a 4-watt fluorescent lamp and I stick an 8-watt lamp on it, it's still only going to output 4 watts, and that's good. That's a safety characteristic, so the ballast doesn't blow if you try to torture it. As for this thing, this does not have that safety characteristic. If I put, a much bigger bulb than the ballast was designed for, the ballast is going to say, okay, and it's going to output that much more current. This dead 6-watt bulb is acting like a 20-watt bulb right now. So the ballast sees like around a 20-watt bulb, and it's doing its best, and it's doing it successfully without destroying itself, to output 20 watts of power. 1.5 amps, multiply that by 12 volts, and you get around like 18 watts of power. So that's really something. So, when you notice a bulb at its end of life in a fluorescent lamp, it's best just to change the bulb. I do this just because I like to see what'll happen. But it's a good thing this thing appears to have such a robust ballast as it does, because it appears that the ballast will output whatever power you ask it to, and amazingly something hasn't blown up yet. And I feel bad now because running this nearly dead bulb in the Rayovac, I wonder if the Rayovac's ballast possibly doesn't have that fail-safe measure, and it's been outputting much more current than it should have, just because this dead bulb has been asking for a lot more current. Well, it doesn't look like this bulb is going to be coming back to life. It's died before, and I've brought it back to life before by overpowering it, and it's worked for a while and then it would die again, but it looks like now it's not going to come back to life. So I might screw around with it more, but for now I'm going to put it aside, and what I'll do for this video now is I'll demonstrate the versatile concept of the ballast in this thing by running fluorescent lamps of several different types in it. And the ballast is just slightly warm to the touch. So because the lamps I'm going to run in this fixture now aren't going to need nearly as much current as that dead lamp, I'm not going to use this as a resistor anymore. I want to keep a resistor on this though, because I'm running it at 12 volts instead of 6 like you're supposed to. So I'm going to run a resistor with a bit more resistance. So I have my vacuum fluorescent display here, and using the filament of it as a resistor is just perfect, and it only allows this thing to draw enough current to start and run the bulbs I'm going to use in it, and it runs at a pretty safe level that I don't think is has a very much risk of hurting the ballast at all. So we're going to hook the filament of this thing up in series. So how I'm going to do this is, this tab right here and this tab right here are the high voltage outputs. I'm going to be using these alligator cables to connect them straight to the lamps directly. This is dangerous, like I mentioned, high voltage, so do not try this at home. We have the negative of our 12 volts line going to the ammeter, other end of the ammeter going to the filament of the vacuum fluorescent display, and the other end of the filament going to the input of the fixture. And just to show as a proof of concept, I'm going to start out with a 6-watt bulb. As you can see, I have the ends of the bulb connected directly to the high voltage outputs, and I'm running it farther away from me. So we plug it in. So it started, and after a while I'll feel this display get slightly warm. You can't see the filaments glowing, but as you can see, this works just fine. And we're drawing that much current, so if we do the calculations, the 12 volt side is about, it's about 11.8, so 11.8 volts times 0.42 amps, and we're getting about 5 watts of power. The odd thing is, I don't know why, but on the 6 volt line, running a 6 watt bulb, it was only using about 2.5 watts, and now we're using 5 watts. but the bulb isn't any brighter, so I can only guess that because I'm running at a much higher voltage than I'm supposed to, the ballast is emitting much more waste heat than it normally would. But there you go, 6-watt bulb, redneck like this. I feel our inline resistor getting warm now. If I bypass the resistor, there's with the resistor, and there's without it. The bulb doesn't get any brighter. It changes color slightly, which is really weird, but it does not get any brighter. So what I'll do now is I'll hook up a 4-watt bulb and show you it with a 4-watt bulb running. Alright, we've got our 4-watt bulb hooked up. Plug in the power supply. And our current drops as the bulb warms up. The 6-watt bulb was drawing 0.42 amps, and the 4 watts drawing 0.33. Now if I bypass the resistor temporarily, once again the bulb doesn't get any brighter, but it changes color. And our current draw goes up quite a bit, but the bulb doesn't change color, so the ballast must be doing something. It's very interesting. Other lamps that I've tried this crap with before, they just output one set current rate and nothing different. This ballast just outputs different current depending on a bunch of different circumstances. It's very weird. But there we go, 0.32. And our power output is formerly 5 watts. Now it's 3.8 watts with a 4-watt bulb. And that's total input. That's not the number of watts that the bulb's actually being powered with. Judging by the brightness of the bulb, it's probably not being powered by any more than 3 watts. So the rest of the power is waste heat, because ballasts are not 100% efficient. If they were, that would be great, but they're not. So, there's a 4-watt bulb. Now, I'll hook it up with an 8-watt bulb, a larger bulb than what this ballast was designed to run. Alright, here's our 8-watt bulb. This bulb has quite a bit of history with me. This bulb came in the very first battery-powered fluorescent lantern I ever owned. It was a 8-watt closet light. I'm not sure if it was a GE, but it probably was. And I believe I bought it at a home hardware store, way back in like 2001 or 2002. And that lamp died, and for some reason, I kept the bulb, and I was allowed to keep the bulb. And I reused this bulb in my second GE 8-watt closet light, which, as you know, recently died. Here's the ballast out of it. So now this bulb is orphaned, and it's orphaned because I have no fixture, no 8-watt fixture I can use it in. My only 8-watt fixture now is the Burgess Safari light, and I can't use this bulb in it because this bulb has none of its filaments intact. So it's orphaned right now. But it does work just fine in this 6-watt closet light with its very odd, versatile ballast. So we'll plug it in, and there, it starts right up. And here's our current draw. And now as it warms up, the ballast lowers the current it puts out. And there's our power, just slightly more than with a 6-watt bulb. So there. Now you can see this ballast works just fine with an 8-watt bulb. Now I'll try it with my only 9-watt bulb. This bulb came out of a fluorescent camping lantern I have that I bought new back in 2006, and it's pretty much dead. It won't start in that camping lantern anymore. And this isn't even the original bulb. This is the second bulb I've had to buy for that lantern. I want to sell that lantern, so it looks like I'll have to buy another bulb. And these bulbs aren't very cheap. But this is a 9-watt bulb. It's a 9-watt 4-pin PL bulb. And it probably won't start. I'll have to bypass the resistor probably for it to start, but we'll plug it in. And I don't believe it started, so I'll bypass the resistor, and there it started. Nope. If I go back to the resistor, it dies out back into the starting mode. So there we go, it remains started. That's our current draw, 5.9 watts. Nice and bright. If we bypass the resistor, there's our current draw. Now we're back on the resistor. So there you go. There is a 9 watt fluorescent bulb running on a ballast designed to run a 6 watt bulb, and the ballast just doesn't care at all. And the ballast is running on 12 volts when it's designed to run on 6. So there you go. But there's one more thing to try. I have something that you guys have never seen before. Up there is a cheap Lights of America F17T8 blacklight, 120 volt blacklight fixture. I bought this for I think it might have been grade 11. Yeah, grade 11 chemistry project that never actually took place. So I don't really have a use for it. It's a very cheap and nasty fixture. It works just fine, but it's so flimsy. The switch on it's very cheap, and it makes a crackling noise when you operate it. And I really don't have a use for a blacklight this large. I have some 6 watt blacklight bulbs now. If I ever want a blacklight, I'll just throw one of those bulbs into the Railvac Sportsman. You probably won't believe this, but that 17 watt lamp actually works on this ballast rated for 6 watts. I'll hook it up and show you right now. Alright, here it is. I'm not sure if the bulb actually starts, but it does indeed glow, so I'll plug it in, and there it's glowing. There's our current draw, and if I bypass the resistor it might actually start. Yeah, I think it actually started. Let me unplug it and plug it back in. And yeah, holy cow, it's actually started. And the resistor's still in line. Let me bypass the resistor. And there it gets brighter. There's our current draw going down as the bulb warms up. 17 watts running on a 6 watt ballast. 0.61 amps. About 7 watts. Running through this 17 watt bulb, and it actually started, and it's running just like it normally would. So we'll unplug it. That's amazing. A ballast designed to run 6 watt lamps running a 17 watt lamp. That's crazy. And it hasn't even blown up. It's even running at twice the input voltage. I know I've said all this before, but it's just so surprising. You know what another crazy thing is? A dead 6 watt fluorescent bulb draws twice the current of a working 17 watt fluorescent bulb. So there's an example right there of what may happen if you don't change your fluorescent lamps when they're dead. This ballast apparently doesn't mind, but other ballasts may mind, and if you leave a dead fluorescent lamp flickering without changing it, you risk killing your ballast. Well, there you go. There's a video showing, first of all, some of the wacky things, both visually and electrically, a dead fluorescent bulb can do. And second of all, there's some of the crazy things that you can do with a fluorescent light ballast that is designed such that it will adjust its power output for whatever lamp you connect to it. I mean, this is designed to run on 6 volts and power a 6 watt lamp, and oops, there goes one of the wires. You have seen it running on 12 volts powering up to a 17 watt lamp, and it doesn't seem to mind at all because it doesn't get very hot and it's still working. So that's crazy for something modern and cheap as this. These, I think they're still being made. They retail for like $10 if you can find them in Walmart or whatever. But there you go. And as for the Railvac Sportsman 180, I guess I'll be sticking another bulb in it, because it doesn't look like that the dead one is going to be coming back to life. Stick this bulb in it. And there, the Sportsman's running happily once again. So there you go.